I'm very feel.
With a new episode, a latest episode, or is it a reboot of the Superfly boxing podcast, now under the banner of the world's premier combat analysis site, the Fight Site. So, going to be slightly different to how we used to do it. It used to be my podcast. Going forward, all the boxing team will lump on and do podcasts their own. And to bring us back, we've got a special Patreon podcast for our excellent patron Miguel. And he's asked for a particular topic, which is a comparison between the legacies of Benny Leonard and Barney Ross. So really, we're picking who is the greatest Jewish fighter of all time. So Benjamin Cohn is going to love that. One of our resident grappling analysts, and that man you hear on the other end of the call is one of our top boxing guys, Taylor Higgins. So how's it going, Taylor?
Very good, thank you, Carl. How you doing?
I'm all right, mate. All right. I don't know when this is going to go out, but for a bit of context, it's a particularly stormy Tuesday evening here in Great Britain.
Oh yeah. So there's not looking good weather, is it? It's been shocking today.
It's abysmal.
Would we really be British, Carl, if we didn't talk about the weather at least once?
I don't think I've ever started a podcast talking about the weather, but it is the first episode, so it's the first time for everything. I've never recorded a podcast with you, mate, even though we've been mates for a while now. So thanks for coming on.
No problem at all. I said at the start when I joined the team, I was like, I'm never going to do a podcast, and here we are. So yeah, get cracking. So yeah, as Carl said, we're doing a comparison today between Barney Ross and Benny Leonard. So how this is going to work is I'm going to talk a bit about what I think, and then I'm going to let Kyle, our resident historian, one of the best boxing historians, or arguably the best in the world at what he does, absolutely fantastic. So and then he can either correct me if I'm wrong, or just offer some extra insight from all the knowledge he's accumulated over the years.
It's certainly a polite way to put it. To all our listeners, I certainly didn't pay him for that brilliant endorsement, but he's also correct. So I mean, Taylor, I'm sure you agree. Your boxing history. I mean, as you know, I've probably gone slightly more in depth on these guys. Before I hand it over to you for a little dissection, I'm just going to let the listeners know that I have both these guys in my top 10 of all time, pound for pound, that is. And yeah, I mean, it's certainly a great discussion, one that I think has not a clear winner, because you're splitting hairs when it comes to fighters this great, but I know I'd have higher. So what about you, mate?
Yeah, so I'm going to put Benny Leonard slightly higher. So I have Benny Leonard about number 8, number 9. Give or take, and I have Barney Ross about number 12, number 11, just a little bit behind. And what differentiates it for me is just slightly greater depth of resume for Benny Leonard. And and don't get me wrong, Barney Ross has some absolutely incredible, fantastic wins. Over guys like Tony Canzoneri, Billy Patrol, Frankie Click, McLachlan, and Seferino Garcia, the world middleweight champion. You might know him for drawing with Henry Armstrong in a fight that Armstrong arguably won, which would have been a world title at middleweight as well in his 4th weight class. But alas, it wasn't meant to be. But what slightly pips it, as amazing as those wins are for Barney Ross, and don't get me wrong, those are fantastic wins, and he's done it over for multiple times as well. So, it's not just beating what guys on the off. This is multiple victories over guys like Canzoneri, McLachlan, Garcia. But what slightly edges it ahead for me is Benny Leonard competing at lightweight in my opinion, Carl. Now, this is what I want you to correct me on if I'm wrong. But my opinion, the best lightweight era of all time.
Well, I'm glad you handed it over me there, because I definitely think it's up there. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, we go down a rabbit hole of comparing eras here. I mean, I might have the period which came not just before, but let's say before Benny Leonard was the Packy McFarland era, and before
Yeah.
that was the Joe Gans era. I think I might go for the Joe Gans era as being the absolute peak. Of that sort of the first sort of 30 years of glove boxing in terms of
Yeah.
the light divisions. But I think for me the best lightweight division of all time was the Ike Williams, Bob Armstrong type era. That I think that was probably the best. But yeah, I mean Leonard's was great. If you look at what he actually did, it's not just the lightweights as well. People think of, Barney Ross has got the pound for pound achievements over Benny Leonard, but of course Benny Leonard he did beat excellent welterweights as well. Jack Britton multiple times, not in the world title fight because he was disqualified. But I mean that fight's a hard fight. You can read so many different reports of that fight and get different ideas of how it was going. Britton was on top, Leonard was coming back. Barney Ross, like you say, the thing with Barney Ross and the argument for Barney Ross, yeah, okay, he's free weight world champion. The light welterweight title in his era wasn't very highly regarded. I don't have Ross in the top 10 at lightweight. It's just not enough, like you said, not enough depth there, even though he did some excellent things. Welterweight, I say he's an arguable top 10 guy. Light welterweight, even though the title wasn't really recognised in that time, I could have him number 1 or number 2. So that, I mean, it depends on how you view the bastard division, so to speak. Is how you take that into account on your rankings. But certainly there was a period in time where Barney Ross was the best guy between 135 and 147, which historically is the best kind of bracketed weight sort of span for most great fighters. With Barney Ross and Leonard in the sort of comparison, yeah, Leonard does have, there's more depth to it. He's beat. I'll sort of gonna run through some fighters in, sort of go with my sort of rankings. It doesn't really mean much, but sort of to give guys an idea of how I rank and how I rank wins. Leonard beat Johnny Kilbane, who for me is a top 10 122 pounder of all time, but obviously known as the great featherweight champion. He beat other really good lightweights like Willie Ritchie. He beat Johnny Dundee, who's obviously a formerly great featherweight and ran super featherweight kind of way. His actual lightweight resume is really good though. Like Everhammer, Lou Tendler, Rocky Kansas, and then the great Freddie Welsh. When you look at the Freddie Welsh series for Leonard, that's kind of how you figure out how he became who he was, because he started off as a guy who wasn't a big hitter and was losing fights, and through the tutelage of Ray Arsal, became a guy who had mastered punching mechanics to the point where he was a puncher. And he was a consummate ring general, and you see that in the fights with Freddie Welsh. He has to knock Freddie Welsh out to win the title. He beats him in the first fight over 10, does not win the title. He loses the return where Freddie Welsh is absolutely on song and bamboozles Leonard, and then Leonard batters and stops him in the third fight to finally win the lightweight title. And you kind of see just in those 3 fights the progression of Benny Leonard. So I think if we're going skill for skill, you're going to say Benny Leonard. I mean, I don't know what your overall. I'd love to hear your overall thoughts on Barney Ross's style, because I've got some very strong thoughts about it, based on the footage and whatnot. But I would say Leonard is a touch ahead on resume, and in terms of the all-round skill set, would be higher as well. Is that so? You've said resume already. What about skill set?
It's actually worth noting as well that Benny Leonard lost quite a lot of his early fights, if I do remember correctly, and it definitely was a steep learning curve over time for him.
But that was the era. That was the era.
Yeah, for sure. And he was very much learning on the job, improving his game. He was always a very analytical fighter, I would say.
Absolutely.
That's completely his game. He's someone who won't just work out at the boxing gym. He will watch other fighters, study their footwork, start thinking about in his head where the openings are. Very cerebral fighter. We talk about Benny Leonard as a great ring general, but this is someone who is very dedicated to his craft. A bit like a student, very much a student of the game. A bit like a postgrad, right? In the sense that he's constantly studying it. His intelligence, his cerebrality, is the thing that stands out to me regarding Benny Leonard. And it's also worth. I'll quickly just glaze over this, but looking again at that lightweight division resume, and 2 others I don't think you mentioned, just like Charlie White and Richie Mitchell.
Oh, absolutely.
And to me, this is I don't want to backtrack a little bit, but this is an age-old issue for me. Is that do we favour a guy who has done it in multiple weight classes, has that that pound for pound standing, or do we look at someone who has ruled over the roost in what was an incredibly competitive division full of top-notch challengers? And it is a tough one to say. But looking at the quality of that lightweight resume, all the names we just mentioned, the Kansas's, Lou Tendler and the like, this is an absolute shark tank of a division. And, Leonard ruling over it with an iron fist as he did, and getting better on the job, as we said, recovering from some early defeats to really master his craft. That's what stands out to me personally. But I'm, as I said, Barney Ross has those fantastic wins across the weight classes. I do slightly give the edge to Leonard, as you said. But in terms of skill, I would also give the edge to Leonard, the footwork, the mechanics. And as you said, someone who learned the mechanics to become a puncher, and such a cerebral fighter. Yeah, I'm very high on Benny Leonard. But, sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, my thoughts on Barney Ross's style is that he reminds me, when you watch him on tape, he reminds me very much of Oscar De La Hoya without the power. He's a guy who's great at range. He can do a lot. He can let his hands go and close as well. Obviously renowned for being one of the true Iron Men of boxing. Only really never stopped, and only really come close to being stopped by Henry Armstrong. We're going to go off on that in a minute as well. But with Barney Ross, I mean, in his sort of prime years, between his loss to Roger Bernard, who was a good fighter. He fought a lot of people, didn't beat a lot of great guys, but he's a good fighter. 56-1-1 between that loss and his loss to Armstrong. So he lost to McLachlan, drew with Click, beat the pair of them as well. So and then Henry Armstrong, who's streaking in his prime, arguably lets Ross off the hook and gives him a career-ending beating. But we talk about the great resume. Yeah, there's more depth on Leonard, but how about this? Let me throw a little curveball at you. 2-0 against Canzoneri and 2-1 with McLachlan. You could say that these two guys, in my opinion, I've got Canzoneri in the top 20, arguably top 10. McLachlan probably top 15 to 25. A lot of people have him higher than me. Those two wins. How many all-time greats do we have in the top 10 of all time who win series against two more fighters that are in the top 20 to 25 of all time? Is that enough for us to take a second and think, hold on a second, Barney Ross, unbelievable. You talk about the meat grinder that Benny Leonard went through. If you look at including the newspaper results, based on what we know, Benny Leonard's full career resume, 186 wins, 21 losses, a lot of them early in his career or right at the end of his career when he came back for the money, because he lost a lot of money in the Wall Street crash, and 9 draws, newspaper draws, so to speak. Barney Ross, 74, 3-3, and in that prime 56-1-1 before losing to Armstrong. So we're not going to hold the loss against Armstrong against Barney Ross, obviously, right at the end of his career. And also, it's Henry Armstrong.
Yeah, it's hot.
That's why Henry Armstrong's in the top 3 of all time. Do you know what I mean? That's not why Barney Ross isn't in the top 10. You say Billy Petroli, there's Sammy Fuller, Battolino, Frankie Click, Garcia a couple times, 3 times. It's a small condensed resume, but consistency. Barney Ross really was. I mean, not that Benny Leonard didn't have an excellent consistent run, but Barney Ross, it's a very sweet looking record. 74, 3-3. It's a beautiful record, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, looking at that, it's a perfectly plausible argument. That particular run is incredible, and it's so rare. How many guys off the top of my head? I can't think of many guys who most people don't have. Most fighters don't even have like one top 10 all time, top 20 all time fighter on their resume. So to have 2 in McLachlan and Canzoneri, and multiple wins over Canzoneri as well, is truly incredible. And for as good as Leonard's wins are, I mean, to me, it's more of accumulation of wins, which is what puts him on. As we said earlier, the depth. The fights against Tendler. I'm kind of one of the reasons why I do kind of slightly edge Leonard is just because of that overall body of work. But it's very hard. This is what I mean when you said earlier about splitting hairs. How difficult is it to split when both guys have such incredible resumes? We're really nitpicking here, you know, and perhaps, you know, I wouldn't have any arguments with you at all if you had Ross slightly ahead because of those incredible wins over two fellow top 20 all-timers. Yeah.
I'm not sure I do though. I mean, I think I have them both in the same bracket. I mean, I'd probably have Barney Ross slightly higher than most. I have him at number 10. He hasn't moved from number 10 for years. Since I first decided Barney Ross is the number 10, for me, he's the perfect way to cap off that top 10. And Leonard for me is anywhere between sort of 7 and 9. You know, I mean, I've got like say Duran and Charles at 5 and 6, and then in that small cluster behind them, I've got Joe Gans, Benny Leonard, Muhammad Ali, and Terry McGovern, and then sort of Barney Ross. That sort of idea. I mean, Barney Ross would stay there, and maybe McGovern would move to number 11 or number 9, depending on what sort of mood I'm in. I mean, Muhammad Ali for me is top 10. A lot of people don't agree with that, but I just love his resume and the amount of different styles he beat. I mean, I think there's a thing as well, and this is an interesting discussion. It's a bit off course, but you knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
And Miguel knew this when he asked for us to have a chat. But just like we do now in MMA, where we sort of always lend credence to the lower weight fighters and diss the heavyweights, there are those rare heavyweights that really did beat pound for pound style talents. I mean, Sonny Liston really was as skilled for his size as anyone you would see. George Foreman, he really would. If you put someone with George Foreman's qualities and a 135-pound body, so he's a big 135-pounder who could just crush people, he would still do damage, you know what I mean, even though he'd be slow. He was slow for a heavyweight, do you know what I mean? It's Ali is just as great as these guys, in my opinion.
It is quite a difficult thing because a lot of it's as you said, the same with MMA. We tend to think of the little guys as, you know, way more skilled, and we look at some of the modern day heavyweights, you know, the Dillian Whites of the world, no disrespect to my boy. And we look at these kind of guys and we think, right, you know, as a general kind of rule, we don't think of them as skilled. But I do agree. I have Ali about 11, I'd say.
That's fair.
So the only, as our resume is pretty, I think our top 5 are exactly the same. So I've got Greb number 1, Armstrong number 2, Sugar Ray at number 3, and then right behind we've got Langford and then Charles. We switch.
I think I've got Duran number 5 nowadays and Charles at 6. But to be honest with you can't really argue either way on that. I mean, if we're splitting hairs between 6 and 12, we're really splitting hairs 1 to 6. You know what I mean?
I think the top 4, arguably the top 5 for me are pretty concrete. I mean, you can have. For me, Greb is the clear number 1, but you know, I remember having conversations with some guys before who have got Armstrong slightly ahead. I think that general bracket is pretty concrete. I have Gans ahead of Duran at number 6 and Duran at number 7, but I do understand that I tend to give a bit more credit to Joe Gans than some do. And then right behind, you've got the Benny Leonard. I've kind of changed my opinion. This is a slight tangent, but I've started to put Willie Pep a bit lower than I did previously.
Oh, you're coming around to my way of thinking. That's my way of thinking.
Is that your way of thinking?
Yeah, yeah. I think I'd probably have Barney Ross above Willie Pep.
Yeah, I'm starting to come around to that idea. And one of the things, I know this is a tangent, Miguel, but just very quickly, because history is history. One of the things that I give a lot of credit to for Pep is that win over Sandy Sadler.
Because when he came back from the plane crash and he'd been beaten up in the first one,
and because it's stylistically a horrible matchup for him. You know, for me, that's one of the greatest wins ever. A true 100 out of 100, considering how difficult that matchup was for him stylistically. He'd already been beaten, and you know, that's one of the great performances to get that win over Sandy Sadler. So I think I've given him a bit of disproportionate all-time great weight because of that. You know,
but no, I've got to cut you off because now you say that. I mean, the depth of resume is really good rather than amazing. But there are some really good wins on there. Basically, apart from not really, he did beat some lightweights, but he wasn't, you know, unlike Leonard and Ross, he didn't really go up and do that. I mean, Leonard did. He beat legitimate all-time great welterweights. But there's something about the depth's good, The consistency is
Yeah.
amazing. The storyline of come back from the plane crash and beating Sadler in that second fight. I think,
Yeah.
you know what? Sometimes a fight is so great, you forget how great he is. And then Pep,
Yeah.
I put him down. But Pep, for me, is the greatest featherweight of all times. How can he not be
Yeah.
top 10? You just
Yeah.
convinced me by agreeing with me that we're overrating him. You've actually convinced me I'm underrating him. Maybe he
Yeah.
should be top 10. But then you got people like Bob Fitzsimmons. I mean, Bob Fitzsimmons, a lot of people don't have him top 10. I have him on the
Yeah,
cusp.
he's got to be
Isn't
up
that
there.
sort of Cantonary, Joe Lewis, Bob Fitzsimmons, McGovern, sort of 11 to 15 kind of thing?
I see. I didn't even
Paddy
put.
McFarland. I mean,
Yeah.
oh man.
I've had Fitz before at 7. I've had him at 8. I've really differed on Fitz, and looking at the Gardner win as well. That's something that I've given him a lot of credit for, considering his age in that fight. This is the thing. It's so tight in this particular area of the pound for pound kind of argument. Is so tight. You really are. There's certain things to me that slightly give more weight. Like, Ali has all these great wins, and a lot of them came when he was past his prime. He's relying on. It's almost like looking at two different fighters, isn't it? The pre exile Muhammad Ali, and then the tough, gutsy one who comes out afterwards, and has all those incredibly heroic and memorable performances. It really is splitting hairs. I mean, I've actually gone a little bit down on Pep because of, as you said, the depth of resume not being as great as the Benny Leonards. But for me, the Sadler win is probably, I would say, in my top 3 wins ever. And I don't know if
gotta be. It's
Yeah.
gotta be. It's
I
something about it. It's something about it. I mean, we spoke about George Foreman earlier, putting him in a featherweight's body. That's what Sandy Sadler was.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that because Dick Sadler trained George Foreman. I mean, literally, if you watch Sadler, the way he kind of creeps in with, I mean, you can't see me and no one else can, but I'm literally mimicking the way him and Foreman kind of came in with that high parry, low guard kind of thing where they swat hands away and throw these horrible, brutal hooks. And of course, Sadler's one of the toughest guys that ever lived. I mean, I really want to stay on the point you just made because it really does. We're great at bringing stuff back, by the way. Anyone's listening to us, we may go off on a tangent. I'm going to bring it back,
fine.
and you're going to love this.
Miguel's
You're
going
going
to
to Yeah, you're going to love this because you're talking about footage of fighters and that we've seen past their prime. Unfortunately for us, when discussing this fight, this comparison, not the fight, but the comparison, is that one of the best bits of footage we got of Benny Leonard is post bankruptcy, which is against Jimmy McLachlan, and only in some of those moments we can see little flashes of what he must have been like. Obviously, we've got Taylor footage. Yeah, there's little bits. I mean. He's fighting a guy. I mean, if again talk about George Foreman, Sandy Sadler kind of thing, McLachlan had that kind of wild, big wild loop and shot to move you onto a shorter one, and that's exactly what he did to Benny Leonard. But you can see that Leonard can't move as well as he used to. He's got a paunch. He's going bald. He's clearly on the wrong side of 30, which in those days, wrong side of 30 is kind of like Muay Thai fighters now. Once you're past 25 in the golden age of boxing, you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But he is done, and yet he is still. There's little flashes of it, and you can go right. Take back 10 years, and I can see why he would have kicked McLachlan's ass. Yeah. And also, you spoke about Duran. We both got Duran higher than Benny Leonard. Do we hold any weight in Ray Arcel's comments? I don't know if you know, Ray Arcel always ranked Leonard as greater than Duran.
Yes, I do know. Yeah.
Duran. There's obviously some thoughts that Arcel and Duran might have fell out a bit, and also Arcel, just like we do, tends to rate the guys from when in his youth, and him in Freddie Brown's youth. But do you hold any weight when Ray Arcel tells you, listen, I've worked with both these guys, and the great Benny is better than Roberto Duran? Do you take that in any? Do you take that? I mean, for little context, Ray Arcel also had Jack Dempsey as one of the top 10 fighters he'd ever seen. I certainly wouldn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree with that at all.
But he trained both these guys, and they're both great lightweights. Most people have them both top 3. It's Gans, Leonard, Duran in any order you want. At least for me, probably for you as well. Given your previous comments from Gans and Duran.
Oh, absolutely.
Ray Arcel, do we say okay, it's a tiebreaker? If Ray Arcel says Benny Leonard is better than Roberto Duran, then he must be better than Barney Ross. Are we going to say that's a tiebreaker, or is it just saying is it an interesting bit of trivia rather than a defining fact?
I think personally, I'm going to lean more to an interesting bit of trivia, and I say that. So if I do remember correctly, Arcel's comments were he favoured Leonard because he was the more intelligent fighter, right? That was what Arcel said, and to me. This looking at and watching Duran, this is bizarre because this is a genius at work. This is someone who is, and I'm not saying Benny Leonard wasn't, not at all. but this is an absolute genius. You know, in my opinion, with my own eyes that I've seen, the best fighter I've ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And look, it's obviously, you know, Arcel coming from a position of authority. Who am I to question? But then what slightly kind of does diminish his comments a little bit. And I know it's not my place to really question because, you know, this is someone who's trained with both. But, you know, that, as you mentioned, that ranking of Jack Dempsey, who to me from what I've seen of him, is caveman. He's you know, very primitive, crude. You know, and it's a difficult thing because you don't know all the other kind of extra factors that are going on. Like, does he hold some resentment against Duran? You know, is there a certain reason he's coming out of this? There's all kind of different factors which could, and to me, all I can go off of, and I think this is the ideal way, is the resume. And for Leonard's, all of Leonard's depth at lightweight, Duran with those, you know, Duran's resume needs no explanation. It's Roberto Duran.
And his longevity, and as you say, his full all-round skill set. I mean, you said he was a genius. I mean, if you watch the fight with Kobayashi, one of the greatest super featherweights of all time, in my opinion, this was before Freddie Brown and Ray Arcel got involved.
Yeah.
And Duran was already doing a lot of things that made him so great. So, and we talked about Fitzsimmons, to bring it all the way back around, that's the kind of thing Freddie Brown was teaching Duran, the Fitzsimmons shift and all this kind of stuff, you know? I mean, it's easy to bring it back round from a tangent because boxing is so interlinked in so many ways.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things, a slight tangent again, is just because I get to talk about my boy Duran for a little bit. This is actually an interesting point. I don't know if you have an opinion on this, Kyle, but the other day someone asked me who for you are the greatest trainers of all time, and no discussion can be without Ray Arcel, that's for sure. But as well, how much weight do you give to Freddie Brown? Because I always think of them very much as a duo rather than just Ray Arcel.
Oh man, it's a great quote. I have to interrupt you. For me, Freddie Brown is the unsung hero. Freddie Brown, I would say Arcel, whilst having technical acumen, was more of a Dundee, a motivator, whereas Brown was the nuts and bolts, X's and O's.
Yeah,
the technical guy. Yeah.
Because I was having this conversation, and for as much as I like Ray Arcel, and I think, you know, he's incredible, I've always thought of them as I said, a duo with Brown very much being the guy who refined the technique of Roberto Duran, got those fine points, which is why I can't, in my opinion, I can't justify having Arcel above Eddie Fuchs, for example, who I think is the greatest trainer of all time. You know, the sharpest boxing mind in terms of coaching, I think ever lived. And yeah, no, I was wondering what your opinion was of this, because I didn't know if that was completely unfounded, but I've always thought very much agreeing with you as Brown as the unsung hero there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm with you 100%. I just got a notification on my phone which says the fight site is having a traffic spike, which is another deviation. But have we actually posted anything today?
Did we have that AAA one, the Abduvakbov?
Oh my God! I mean, you're brave for trying to pronounce it. Let's have a look. This will be funny. Oh no! I think a Leftwise site must have shared something, because Mark Struder's piece on Tartar or Farfar, I'm not sure, a Leftwise guy, has had over 600 hits today.
Bloody hell!
Someone shared that, and we've had 384 hits from Myanmar, which means there are loads of guys in Burma today that have seen this link and are clicking on it. We've had 90 from Thailand.
Bloody hell.
I mean, as you know, close to my heart, Southeast Asia. So I'm very happy. I mean, sorry to go off tangent again.
No problem.
We're just having a conversation here. Where are my
Uzbek fans at? I want them to spike.
Wow, you know,
they need more footage. They need more Uzbek content.
I'm going to bring it round, because I think it's clear to see we had a lovely little discussion about this. We both have them guys in a similar bracket, but we both have Benny Leonard ahead. So first and foremost, I want to thank Miguel for an excellent question.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic question. Thank you very much, Miguel.
I then want to say to any of our patrons that enjoyed this, two things. First thing is that there are going to be more boxing podcasts. They won't always have me on it, because now we are the fight site. It's not just my show. Sometimes my man is going to present. Sometimes my man Taylor's going to present. Sometimes our main man Philippe's going to present. Sometimes Lukash is going to be on there. I hope. We're going to have Scott from Asian Boxing on. We know that for a fact. You know, hopefully get Lee Wiley on and guys like that.
And our newest member, of course, Ollie Radarex.
Yeah,
who's fantastic.
hopefully the announcement will be out before this podcast. But if not, who better to break it than us?
Ollie's actually messaged me earlier today saying he's very excited to get on some podcast work with us, which would be absolutely fantastic.
Also, it'll make us sound older because I think he's about 12, so that's good. But what I'm going to say is, any patrons that like this, don't worry, there's going to be non-patron. I mean, this is actually a patron-only podcast as far as I know. We're going to put this on YouTube, but the actual topic was requested by a Patreon. So first and foremost, if you like this discussion, if you want more, you can request me, you can request Taylor, you can request me and Taylor, you can request whoever you like. We'll try and accommodate you for any kind of discussion, any kind of topic when it comes to the history of boxing or modern boxing or things we like to see come up in boxing. You can choose whatever you like if you're part of that $10 tier. And also want to say that we'll get better. You know, I haven't done podcasts for a while. We'll get the editing better. Everything will improve. As we'll endeavour to do with all of our podcasts. I want to say thanks to all the patrons, especially Miguel for asking this question. But you talked about the Uzbek content, Taylor. Yeah. What are you actually going to publish next? We've got, I don't know when this podcast is going out, but we've either going to have or have already had the breakdown, the predictions for Fury and Wilder. 2. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that, or hopefully you will enjoy it when it comes out. But Taylor, what have you got planned? What's coming out?
So we've got I've got one thing in my front mirror, my front view right now, and this is something I'm going full concentration on. So I'm going to be doing an insight into Cuban amateur boxing and why Cuban athletes don't necessarily translate so well to the pros. And I've actually been incredibly fortunate. I've got some interviews with some incredible people. In fact, the best of all, and I actually found this out earlier last week. So I haven't told anyone this yet, including Kyle, but I've actually managed to get an interview by email/text with Gary Hyde, who was Guillermo Rigondeaux's manager and actually bought him from Cuba. So I managed to chase Gary down, and I asked, can I ask for some of your insights? So this is a man who has first-hand experience with this. I've also had interviews with a number of other humanitarian types who have helped get these Cuban athletes out, as well as a former World Championship bronze medalist who has been incredibly insightful, just getting me a better idea of Cuban culture and the different factors as to why Cuban athletes in the professional ranks don't necessarily translate great. And as well, with Lomachenko Lopez being announced, there'll be sure to be more Lomachenko articles coming out soon. I've got a piece ranking his wins, rating them out of 100, and a piece on his amateur career. So yeah, plenty of good content to come.
The Lomachenko pieces you've been working on for as long as I tend to work on mine. So now we've got something to actually, and that's not a criticism. Everyone knows I'm the great procrastinator. So it takes me 4 or 5 months to do anything, which is why I'm going to say now that I don't know when my next piece is coming out. Probably these sort of conversational pieces like this will be all you get from me for a while, okay, apart from the occasional puff piece. But I'm working on a very large project, as you know, Taylor, and it's going to be a while. I was aiming for April. It's going to be later than that, but rest assured, when it comes out, when I come out with stuff, it's book length. So it might be a Patreon exclusive. We don't know yet. Maybe I'll release a few parts and then say if you want to read the rest, it'll be on Patreon. We're not 100% sure yet. Haven't really begun writing it. Still deep in the research.
Kyle, you need to do 5. You release 5, and then for the top 5, you have to make it Patreon content. No, everyone will be at the edge of their seat.
This next one actually isn't a ranking. This is something completely different. This is actually not boxing related, it's MMA related. Something we're working on for a while. Been working on for about 4 months.
Hold on. If I'm correct, my memory's just jogged. It is a history of the lineal title, isn't it?
Yeah, but let's not tell them which weight class it is. Let's keep them.
No spoilers.
Let's keep them waiting. I mean, it's going to be. People are going to think this is hyperbole, but anyone who's read my pieces, no, I'm not taking the piss when I say this. It's going to be one of the most comprehensive pieces ever written on the history of mixed martial arts. So I hope everyone that liked my Fedor piece, my Sakuraba piece, and that kind of, and my Demetrius Johnson piece enjoys this as much. Fantastic. It's something a little bit different, kind of marrying my love for history and storytelling with MMA. Man, I think you'll really enjoy it. I hope everyone enjoyed this sort of rambling chat. And as I say, if you want more content like this, go to our Patreon. Go to thefightsite.com, check us out. It's www.thefight- or -site.com if you haven't been there before and you're just picking this up because somebody shared it on Twitter or Facebook, or you just clicked into a YouTube K-hole like so many people do. And and please support us and get, even if you can't afford a couple of bucks a month, a share is as good as a donation. I mean that, and I'm sure you agree, Taylor. So I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
If we're here, if you want to hit us up on Twitter, you can find me at Polgasboxeo, which is PULGASBOXEO. Taylor, how can people find you?
I'm easy. I'm nice and easy. I am at Taylor on Sport. So TAYLOR on Sport. So I'm nice and easy.
So hit us up if you want to ask any questions, any short questions, and if you've got any big, wide-ranging discussion type things, hit up our Patreon. We're more than happy to accommodate you. Taylor, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for having me on, Carl. It's been absolutely fantastic to speak history with someone as knowledgeable and esteemed as yourself. It's been brilliant.
Mate, we went tit for tat, and maybe next time we'll give us something which would be a bit of a curveball for the pair of us, and maybe it'll be something, I mean, even if someone says to me, just one final thought, if someone says to me, Carl, I want you to talk about this, I want to have someone like you on, or Phil, or Lukash, or even someone like Ryan Wagner, because it's good for someone to say to me, look, this is what I know, tell me what you know. It's good to have someone to bounce off, to jog your memory, to give you conversation points. And one thing I've got to say, beforehand we said we'd talk maybe half an hour. For $10, Miguel has got nearly 40 minutes worth of chat. So we say this, a podcast discussion, it might be a question on the podcast, you never know what you're going to get. So
it's because we ramble on, Kyle.
Yeah, but give us that. People love to hear us ramble. Give us your effing money, as Bob Geldof once said. Right, take care, Taylor, my man.
Take care, Carl. All the best.
Bye-bye, mate.